everybody. Welcome to the Dating is Hard podcast. I'm your host, Joe Welkie. For everything you need to know about this podcast, you can go to datingishardcomedy.com. You can follow the Instagram at datingishardcomedy. And you can even follow me on Instagram at Joe Welkie to see where all my shows are and updates about this podcast. The Dating is Hard live comedy game show is every fourth Wednesday at Pack Theater, which is a by-donation theater. So that means if you got extra money to throw the theater's way, please do. But if you don't, guess what? You can still come and enjoy all the shows that are at Pack. It's an awesome place for checking out some good sketch, improv, and stand-up comedy. If you could please subscribe, rate, review to this podcast, that'd be awesome. Give it 5 stars. That's great. Tell a friend about it if you're really enjoying it. And if you're not enjoying it, don't tell anybody. Please help me out. Do not tell a soul. I would really enjoy that. So if you're familiar with the show, you generally know that I get all of my guests via dating apps, but today is a little different, and I think it's a really unique episode. I get to talk with a matchmaker, and you get to hear all about what goes into being a matchmaker, how to become one, what are the best parts and worst parts of the job. So I hope you guys enjoy my chat with Alyssa. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Dating is Hard podcast. I'm your host, Joe Welkie, and if you're familiar with this show, you know that I generally meet all of my guests through dating apps, but today's a little bit different. I met this lovely young woman, I think it was through Instagram. Was it Instagram?
Yeah, it was through Instagram.
Unique thing. I try to get all types of people on here with different opinions and different experiences in the dating world, and I was so excited to have you on because you have a very unique perspective on dating because you are a matchmaker. So I would like to welcome to the show, Alyssa.
Yay, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Welcome to the show, Alyssa.
Thank you.
I'm so happy that you're here.
Yeah, I'm happy you slid into my DMs.
Yeah, well, I think it was like you might have liked a couple of my posts from the Dating is Hard Instagram.
I think I followed you first,
Yeah,
actually.
and then I saw what you were doing. I was like, oh, this would be perfect. Yeah. This would be perfect. I would love to see what this is all about.
Well, I have a question for you. Did you ever know if, like, the matchmaking world existed until you saw my Instagram? Or
I knew that it existed, but I didn't know it existed in, like, the... on the level. Like, the only matchmaking stuff that I'm familiar with is, like, the show Millionaire Matchmaker.
Right.
I feel like it's not a thing for regular people.
Yeah.
And it's for, like, the rich exclusively or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming that that's not true.
Yeah, and that's definitely what I would love to hopefully break that stigma about.
Yeah.
I mean, love is definitely not exclusive only for millionaires.
No, love is only for the rich. You know, all of us, destitute people, we're not allowed to love.
Yeah, sorry.
So how did you get into matchmaking? How do you find that? How long have you been doing it?
Yeah.
Etc. Oh, God. Wow, this is a record for
hello.
Everybody. I'm so sorry. This is the Tiff interruption. We're 2 minutes into this podcast.
Wow, yes.
No, you're not sorry. She knows that it's happening. A Tiff. This is Alyssa.
Hi, Alyssa.
Hello.
You
Nice
get to ask Alyssa any question.
So how did you get into matchmaking?
Fucking you, copycat.
Great question.
I want to stop the flow, man.
No, great question.
How did you get into matchmaking?
So I know it's definitely a unique kind of industry to get into, but for me, I think it was kind of like a gradual process. So originally, it kind of started back in college, right? I was in my senior year of college. I was entering my final quarter, and I think you kind of get to that point where you're like, what am I going to do once I graduate, right? So obviously, I started looking into some internships, and one that I came across was through a dating app. I don't know if you've heard of Coffee Meets Bagel. It's like one of the biggest ones. Yeah. So in my senior year of college, Coffee Meets Bagel was just getting started. So I think they were still in like early like testing, etc. Right? Not a lot of people knew about the app. So my uncle actually knows the owners, the 3 sisters, right? They go to church together. And so they're getting started with Coffee Meets Bagel. And they're pretty much offering me this internship to be their marketing person and essentially just to help out with their social media. So when I kind of started looking into Coffee Meets Bagel, I was like, whoa, this is interesting. Like, I was never on dating apps before that or anything like that. I feel like Tinder was just kind of getting started too.
Yeah.
And then so once I realized like this could be a job. I actually didn't end up getting to do the internship just because their office is in San Francisco, and they told me they needed me like that week.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna drop
You can't
school.
drop
My final quarter to leave, right? But I think that's kind of when I started getting really curious about the dating space. And in my final quarter of school, I was like, let me go on a date myself just to see what Coffee Meets Bagel is all about.
Yeah, did you get on the date through Coffee Meets Bagel?
Yeah, so I tested it out, and I was like, I actually ended up going on my first date with one of the TAs at school. So we went through like an office. It honestly
Scandalous.
it was very uncomfortable. It felt like an office hours. Like he was definitely acting like a TA, and I was just, but it was really interesting. It was just like, we had an hour to just kind of get to know each other, and this is like a complete stranger. So that was essentially my first dating app date.
Yeah. It was for a job.
Yeah, it pretty much I felt like it was for, you know, research analysis, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that got me curious from it, and I was like, this is really cool, and it's something I would love to get involved
What did you study in college?
I was an anthropology major,
Okay.
which is the study of people. So
Yeah.
I always found this kind of thing very fascinating. You know, before like even working or wanting to do this internship, I always wanted to write like relationship articles. I was more into the editorial side. I was working with like a women's magazine. So
Which
that's
one?
I don't know.
Are you
if I
at
know
liberty
it.
to tell?
It's called like Her Campus Media.
I think I remember that.
Do you? Yeah, I mean-
well, I was like a dating relationships advice
Oh, really?
writer for Elite Daily for a while.
What?
Yeah, that's how I kind of got my start.
That was
into-
like my dream job.
Yeah.
Elite Daily like never they'd never read my Her Campus articles, but
no.
but that was like something I always wanted to do. So initially when I kind of got into the dating space, I was like, I want to be like an Elite Daily relationship columnist. So that was kind of my initial goal. And then I started getting into the dating app space, and then my kind of shift, you know, I shifted my focus a little bit to essentially want to make my own dating app. That was kind of like the long-term vision. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, so let me get into the tech space. So I ended up working with like Match.com. I still work with Match.com today, and I rewrite people's dating profiles for them. So that's kind of how I really got started. And then from there, I was also working at a web design agency, and I was doing marketing for them and project management. So on the side, I was actually working with some smaller like dating companies to do their marketing and PR for them, like some in New York. Yeah, and then from there, I was just like, okay, I can keep going down this route, but in the end of the day, like I'm never gonna see a human soul. You know, this is all like algorithm based. Like dating
Yeah.
apps are cool, but in the end of the day, like if I want to stay working for dating apps, then all I could really do for them is marketing. And that's just not something I was that interested in. I would rather like talk to people like how we are, hear their story, and just see how I could like directly impact people. So that's when I was like, okay, I came to this point where I'm like, you need to just stop, or you're going to get too deep into this, and take a step back and see what else is out there. And then that's how I kind of discovered or like stumbled upon matchmaking. And I was like, whoa, this is actually a job, you know, other than, what you see on TV. Yeah. And then from there, like I ended up moving to San Francisco, and then I got into matchmaking. I started as a client advisor. So at first, you know, I was the one kind of just scheduling the dates, etc. And then I kind of built my way up to actually working with clients to like matchmake them and
That's
set
so
them up
cool.
on dates. Yeah.
You said that you wanted to make your own dating app. Did you have like a specific hook to your dating app?
I do, and maybe it's still in the works.
Oh, okay. I won't press hard. I don't want you to reveal your business
I definitely
plan here.
have no problem sharing what it is. But for me, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a dating app in terms of, you know, connecting people together. But something I've always wanted to do was essentially like curate the date experience for two people who are on a dating app to have like a unique first date to come together. Just because I feel like these days, whenever you ask people like, oh, how did you meet your boyfriend or girlfriend, a lot of times they'll just say like, oh, I met them on an app.
Yeah.
Right. And I just feel like these days that doesn't really create an authentic connection. It's very hard to really, you know, click with somebody when you're doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I kind of want to give people the opportunity to do something really different and fun. Yeah, it's a little bit more of a risk and more time investment, but in the end of the day, I feel like you get more out of it, right? You're going to really click with somebody on a deeper level rather than just sitting across from them over drinks or coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. I always, and I think that most people, the first date is like drinks, coffee, dinner, etc. Oh God, etc. again. I've been saying that so much today. It's been pissing me off.
It's only the
sorry.
third time, so you're good.
I don't know. You know when you get like just a word stuck on you and you just
yeah.
keep saying it over and over?
Everyone has their filler word.
Ugh, today it's been etc. Ugh. Anyway, but I feel like whenever I've tried to do a unique kind of first date,
yeah,
I always kind of get burned, because I'll plan something a bit more elaborate than just coffee or whatever, and then somebody will like cancel last minute or be like, oh, my car broke down or whatever, and so that's why I think it's tough to make those commitments to that,
I understand that.
But if it's like you've invested time and all this and all that shit into, I'm going to go on it and I've had a matchmaker do this for me, or I have an app that's specifically for unique date concepts, I think that people would be more likely to do it. But if you're doing it via Tinder or Bumble or something like that, it's tough to get people to commit to it because, it
might not go well.
Well, it might not go well, and then you're stuck there with somebody.
Yep.
But also, there's the prevailing idea of, like, I don't owe you anything. And
Interesting.
while that does suck, it does make sense.
Yeah.
Because the person doesn't really owe the other person anything. But when you have this, like, kind of elaborate date planned, then you get someone that's like, I don't feel like going anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, well, fuck.
I know you plan this whole thing. No, I agree with you 100%. And actually, what I tell my clients whenever I'm helping them plan their first date is, a lot of times I'll hear that exact, response from them. They're like, well, what if I don't even like them? And now I'm stuck to this like 2-hour dinner, or or what if I'm just not even attracted to them, or there's no chemistry, right? And so they want to opt for these like low risk dates because they feel like at least there's nothing to lose that way.
Yeah.
So usually what I tell my clients is, well, then what I would do is I would just split the date in your mind into 2 parts, right? Have the first part be something that's low risk, right? Maybe grabbing coffee or drinks, right? And then just see if there's that initial chemistry conversationally, that attraction. And then, if all things are going well, you can easily kind of bring it up in the day and just say, hey, if you're not doing anything later, there's this really cool like indoor golf course down the street. Like, do you want to go there? Do you want to check it out? And that way it's a lot more casual, right? But it gives you the opportunity to bail out if there isn't any chemistry there. But if there is, then you can continue it and do something that is a little bit more original, a little bit more unique.
That's a good.
You've already like broken the ice at that point.
Yeah, and then it's like it's a good backup thing. Like, let's keep this going. Let's see you in a different environment at this point, and it's just you're learning more about the person.
Exactly.
My buddy, he said that like his ideal first date, and I'm going to ask you this in a second.
Yeah.
But he was like, it'd be good. He's of the mindset, and I never thought about this before, to go to like a show or a movie or whatever first, and then get food or something after, because then you have something to talk about.
Yeah.
Be like, what did you think of the movie while you're at the dinner, in case you don't really necessarily hit it off. You can at least, number one, you experience a movie or a show, and that's always fun.
Yeah.
And you can have that experience.
Yeah.
And then you can slide the conversation from how did you like the movie to more personal things like that.
So you have something to kind of be like that common ground point, at least.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you have that.
Interesting. Oh,
I never thought of that before.
Yeah. I never thought about that either.
As soon as when I heard that, I was like, I'm such an idiot. Like, how did I not think of that?
Well, have you ever tried it out after that to see if it works for you?
No. I mean, sometimes, like what I was saying is I always tried, well, not always, but like in the past, I've tried to do unique dates. And I always think a great, unique date, especially out here in LA or even in New York. There's so many like #1 comedy shows and improv shows and stuff. So a good first date in my mind is go to a UCB, Upright Citizens Brigade, improv / sketch comedy show, and then get dinner or something afterwards.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't like comedy?
Right.
It's great.
Good
It's
point.
the unifying factor. And then you can talk about it afterwards at the thing. So I've unconsciously done it, but I've never like planned it out like we're going to do this and that
Right.
because this is the plan.
Yeah.
And also those UCB shows and there's stand-up shows and stuff that are pretty cheap.
I was going to just ask that.
Yeah.
Just because my comedy knowledge is very small, but I was just, is that expensive? Like, is that
Yeah,
an
the
expensive
tickets
first
for a UCB show are like $7 each.
date? Oh, okay.
It's not that much. And
Yeah, that's
like,
not bad at all.
Exactly. But what I wanted to ask you is, what do you think is a good idea for a first date? Like, if you're like, I'm planning a date, or if you are personally going to go on a date, what do you think would be the best thing to do?
I mean, like the movie thing is usually something I don't advise,
Yeah.
just because you literally can't do any talking.
Yeah, you're just
There's
sitting
no
next to
room
somebody.
for intimacy, potential, arm grazing, like, and just kind of that like way to create that spark.
See,
I
that's
feel
what
like-
I always thought.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand from your friend's perspective that you have something to talk about after, but I mean, I also just feel like at that point after like a 2-hour movie, you're a little bit like burnt out too,
Yeah.
right? Like, yeah, you want to talk about it, but I mean, at this point, that's already like a 5-hour date then, even
Yeah,
though
that's
for half
crazy.
of it you didn't get to do anything
Yeah.
or to get to know this person. So it's like, I feel like you kind of already are looking at the clock at that point, right? You're like, how late is it? And you don't really want to stick around as long. That would be my thoughts. Obviously, I haven't tested it out.
Which is, hold on, a side note, UCB shows are usually like an hour max.
Yeah,
So
I think it
that's-
shouldn't be any longer than an hour. Honestly, like my ideal first date, I would want it to not go past 3 hours max. Because I just feel like at that point, like I said, you're going to get burnt out. You're just going to start to get a little bit, you're just going to start to get a little bit dazed.
Yeah,
Naturally,
antsy.
your eyes kind of start to wander, right? Like you want to walk away feeling like, oh, like I want to do a second date because I want to get to know this person more. But if you feel like you have them all figured out on the first date, like the motivation's just not going to be there as much. I strongly think that a good first date does consist of something, a little bit more unique. Like I think dinner dates just get really old. And even with like a lot of my clients, a lot of times like I give them date feedback, and a lot of the times like if it doesn't work out on one of like usually on the guy's part, then well not usually on the guy's part, but if it doesn't work out, right? This is like a common scenario. I feel like the women are always like, what did I do? Was I just not attractive enough? Was I not interesting? But the feedback can usually just be very simple, and it will be, no, I actually had a really good time. So it's crazy that they don't want to go on a second date, but for men, like they're going on so many first dates, good just doesn't cut it anymore.
Yeah.
They need something that really stands out in their memory. Like, whoa, this is different. And that's what motivates people these days to want to continue to go out and not feel like this is another first date.
Yeah.
So that's why I always say, like, go for drinks in the beginning. You maybe like loosen up a little bit, get that banter going. And then I think you should just do something fun, like old school, like mini golf or maybe not
Bowling or
movies.
something?
Bowling, exactly. Something that involves an activity, but nothing like too strenuous. Something that you can still talk very easily. It's not like too loud, like a concert or a show. Even like comedy shows too, like it's funny, but in the end of the day, like if your humor doesn't align, like it could be a hit or miss.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but like mini golf or bowling, who cares if you win or lose? You don't have to be good at it. You just have to, you have something to do, but you get to know each other better and still talk. So that's my version of like an ideal first date.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from with that. What kind of, and you don't have to go into specifics, but like what kind of clientele is coming to a matchmaker like you? Is it just, like I said at the beginning of this, I thought the
what do you
matchmaking is like
think
all
usually?
rich people or something. what kind of spectrum are we talking about here? Is it just every single type of person that's out there, or is it like more skewed towards old people or young people, or what do we got going on?
No, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, it can be a wide spectrum, but generally, you don't really see people, I feel like, using matchmakers that are younger than 30. And I feel like once you kind of hit the 30 and above, your mindset just changes a little bit, right? Where you're like, hey, I'm not here to just keep being on dating apps. I don't want to do the same thing over and over again. Like, I really want to find somebody who's serious about this and wants to potentially start a family. Obviously, like, matchmaking is something that is like a big investment for a lot of people. So usually the people that come to us, like, they're ready to find their life partner. They're ready to start a family, and that's what they want for themselves. So a lot of times, like, it's usually like 30 and above, but I have clients as old as like 80, at any age. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like, everybody wants love, and this doesn't even have to be like your first love. I have plenty of people who've been through divorce, or their husband or wife has passed away, and it's been years, and they're ready to finally open up their heart again. So a lot of people come for different reasons and different motivations, but in the end of the day, like, I'm pretty sure they all want just that serious relationship, and to not mess around anymore.
Yeah, I think going to a matchmaker shows a certain level of commitment too, of like, no, I'm taking this seriously.
Yeah.
I'm not just dicking around on Tinder or whatever. I'm not just,
exactly
trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I even tell my clients, I'm like, just because you're using a matchmaker doesn't mean you just shut off all your dating apps. Essentially, matchmaking is just another avenue to potentially meet somebody amazing, but don't use that as like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like, just look at it as another resource. And I think it's just a matter of like putting yourself out there in as many ways as you can, just because it creates more opportunities to meet different types of people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like if you're applying to jobs, you're not just applying to stuff via LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn. You're on Indeed. You're on all the other Monster
you're
or
on
whatever.
anything. Yeah.
You're just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Open yourself up to all the possibilities.
Right, because not all companies are, just on LinkedIn or anything like that. Like, some people don't even necessarily know that that's what they want either. Like, so the people that I feel like on dating apps are people that are really like, I want to meet somebody. But then there's people who aren't on apps at like events and things like that, who still want a relationship, but maybe like that wasn't necessarily like their number one priority. But once they kind of start talking with a matchmaker and they start really reflecting on their life, they realize like, I do want that person in my life. And it kind of like opens up that door for them too, to start thinking about it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
In terms of, I'm curious, in terms of gender breakdown, do you work more with men or women, or is it people that are contacting you to be made to a matchmate or whatever? Yeah. Is it more men or is it more women? Is it like a huge disparity in terms of?
It's definitely not huge. I would say it probably leans a little bit more women than men.
Do you hear that, fellas? Get in, your odds are much better with a matchmaker.
Seriously. And it's interesting too, because it can also depend based on what city you're in. Different cities have different like dating ratios, I guess you could say.
Yeah, because you work all throughout Southern California.
Yeah, and our entire matchmaking team, like, we're all over the U.S., so we're constantly kind of talking about what the dating scene is like in each city. And so I came from San Francisco. I was a matchmaker in San Francisco before I moved out to L.A., and San Francisco's market is actually a lot more single men than women. But at the same time, I think people, the stereotype with like San Francisco is it's a lot of like techies, kind of,
That's
quote
exactly
unquote like nerdy
went.
people, right? So there might be a lot of single guys, but at the same time, sometimes like the women aren't that interested in these types of guys. So dating is still hard in San Francisco. LA, I feel like it's a little bit more even, maybe a little bit more single women than men, and then New York is like very little single men and tons of amazing single women. So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I lived in New York for 5 years before I moved out here, and everyone was always saying that like the ratio of women to men is like insane.
Yeah. As in like a lot more
There's
women.
a lot more single women than single guys,
Yeah,
and they're
exactly.
you just have all these opportunities.
Yeah. Did you feel like that was the case for you when you were there?
Yeah, kind of, I guess. I don't know.
It depends on the person.
I wane in terms of like my interest and my level of interest in dating, period.
Yeah.
So there were periods where I just was like taking time off, or I was in serious relationships for a while, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it depends on the person.
Yeah, I mean, also as I've gotten older, I feel like if I had lived in LA during the same age period
True.
versus like now I'm 30 and my priorities are different than when I was living in New York and I was like 24.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about, the people who like usually end up coming to matchmakers are usually my youngest clientele are actually like 36.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I get somebody who's younger than that, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so young. Like that's how I see it now that I'm like in matchmaking. Yeah, it's so interesting because it's like you just see like there's so like you think that this is your life from now on. Like you kind of got it all figured out, but when you're in matchmaking, like you talk to so many people of so many different ages, you see like a lot can happen throughout your life. Like there's people who are in like 20-year relationships. And then at 55, they're looking for love again. But I'm sure they never predicted that, So it's
yeah, that's true. Do you find it hard when someone is like, let's say a 26-year-old or something came to you? Would it be difficult to find a match for them because your clientele is usually like of a certain age?
I mean, if I'm 100% honest, I think in that case, age sometimes can definitely depend on the gender.
Okay.
People have different experiences. Just because I notice a lot of times men want to date younger, and women are actually more comfortable dating like their own age. So
So
feel
if a
like
26-year-old came to you and be like, I hope you're into cougars, buddy.
yeah. Exactly. Like I feel like if it was a woman and she was 26, I would have an easier time matching her if she was open to dating a little bit older, like somebody in their early 30s, mid 30s. There'd be plenty of people. But I think if it's a guy and he's 26, it's a little bit more challenging to find that for him.
Yeah, whenever I would talk about, you talk to your friends about like all of your dating woes and all that. Oh, I almost said etc. again. Fuck.
It's okay.
People. Have you ever counted how many times someone says like when you're talking to them? I always said that that's always a sure sign that you're just not into that person anymore.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I
but
haven't thought of it that way.
But anyway, what was the point I was going to make?
Wait, just curious. Why do you think that is? Why do you think saying like a lot means you're not interested in a person? Because you can't think of something to say?
No, there were times where I would be dating someone and I was already kind of annoyed with them.
Yeah.
And then I would hone in on how many times they say
saying,
like.
when you count, when you're like
and
hyper aware of like.
And you're just.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
She said like 7 times in the span of one sentence. And then you're just in your own head about like, am I dating an idiot or like? But it's a self-fulfilling kind of.
Okay. That makes sense.
I forgot what I was going to ask you now, though, because I said etc. one more time.
You're saying, all right.
What were we talking about?
You were talking about when somebody says likes a lot and.
But before that.
Okay.
Damn it.
Oh, no.
I lost it.
No.
This whole podcast is derailed. No. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Whenever I've complained to one of my friends about my dating woes, I've gotten the advice of somebody saying to me, you just need to date an older woman.
Oh,
but older women aren't interested in dating younger guys, I've found, for the most part.
I would say the opposite. I think women are definitely interested in dating younger guys, but younger guys don't want to date older women. It's very hard. Most of my clients are females. They're 100% open to dating younger, as long as they're mature and in a good place in their life. But it's very hard for me to find a match for them that's open to dating somebody who's older than them.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think are the most important or most prevalent difficulties in dating for, I'm going to do this for both of them, but let's start with men. What do you find is like the most, what are they having the most hard time with?
I mean, I don't want to sound superficial, but
do it.
Men are just very, very looks based. Like, I think that's like the big thing. Like, they're satisfied if the person's attractive or not. Like, I always tell women too, like on dates, I'm like, look, men, I feel like they have only like 2 things that they want to walk away from on a first date. And that's, was I attracted to this person? And did we have fun? Right? I don't think they're looking at this long checklist of, is she marriage material, this and that, like what's her advanced degree. Like, I think women care about stuff like that, but I think for men, they just want to walk away with that feeling like, am I attracted to them? And that was a fun date.
Yeah.
And so just for a lot of guys, like, I feel like they are heavily just look based, like visual, like pictures really matter to them. That attraction aspect really matters to them. And what I hear from a lot of guys is, they always say they want to date younger because if they want to have kids, like they're thinking of it, from that perspective. But I mean, in the end of the day, like attraction has to go both ways too.
Yeah.
So, I heard this like article or this study was essentially saying that men are usually attracted to 20% higher than their like attraction range. So what they usually are attracted to somebody who's like 20% like more attractive than they are. And women are like,
that's so hard to quantify
mathematically.
mathematically.
I know, right?
Well, she's 20% hotter than me, so she's an ideal match. You're
So
like,
it's
what?
like she's a little bit out of your league, but not too much. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And those are that's always like what guys usually like go for.
Well, did you ever see that movie, She's Just Not That Into You? Remember they had that equation of if you can date two numbers up. So if you're a 7,
Exactly.
you can date a 9,
Yeah.
theoretically.
Exactly. I mean, that's
That
pretty
would
much,
make sense.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard as a matchmaker just because it's like, okay, yes, that might be what you want to date, but it's got to be a 2-way street. Like, if they're not attracted to you, what can I do? You know, I can't force them to go out with you. So like that's always a challenge, I feel like, for guys. Like, they want these like not unattainable women, but yeah, in a sense, like, I think they're just putting their focus sometimes in not the wrong places, but in different places than women. And so a lot of times they're missing out on some amazing women who do want to start families, who are very smart, educated, funny, but just because they're a little bit older,
They're
or
not,
maybe just not like
yeah.
the physique of like what they're looking for, they rule them out entirely. So that's what I noticed for guys is usually what I have the conversations with them about. And then for women, it's kind of tying into that in the sense like they want these things of, a good guy who has like a stable job, has a good personality, etc. But, they want to date like within their own age range. But a lot of times, like maybe the guys aren't, there's just this mismatch a little bit.
Yeah.
Women want guys who are the same age. Guys who are the same age want girls who are younger. Girls who are younger don't want guys who are older. So in the end of the day, like they're all a little bit outside of their range. So everyone stays, everyone has a hard time because they all kind of want something a little bit different. It's very hard to like get them to like on both sides to match up, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I don't want this to sound bad, but I don't know how to phrase it without it sounding like accusatory.
Just shoot it at me.
So take this. This isn't like a slight or anything, but but what about you thinks that you are a good matchmaker? Like, what makes you the person to be trusted with like, let's say, my love life?
Oh, that's a good question. And that didn't sound accusatory at all.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I think like the most important thing when you're looking for a matchmaker is you want that transparency. I think like that's the biggest thing, right? And you want somebody who isn't just going to be a yes man, which is not my style at all. Like, I want you to tell me what you're looking for, but also my pushback is always, this isn't, find your customizable boyfriend, girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
You can't just give me a checklist and then send me on my way. That's not how it works. Like, I'm here to help you find somebody you're really compatible with. So sometimes that is going to involve a little bit of pushback and getting you to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and open your perspectives and preferences to some really amazing people that maybe is a few inches shorter than what you initially thought you wanted, but has, all the same core values that you're looking for and, has a really funny personality. So like for me, those are the kind of things that I'm looking for as a matchmaker. And, in the end of the day, like for relationships, etc., like there's never like one set formula. So to say 100% like I'm an expert, I don't think that's the way to go about it, especially for matchmaking. I think, there's always room to continue to learn and to grow. But I think if you have a matchmaker who's genuinely willing to listen and to, like I said, improve and to grow and to hear your feedback and improve on it, then I think you're working with a reliable person. Not every match is going to come out of it in a relationship, but at the same time, like if you work with, somebody who, like I said, is all about personal growth and reflection, then I think even at the end of it, even if you are single, you have things that you could take away for the rest of your life and apply to dating. It's not this like Band-Aid solution. Like it changes your core way of thinking for dating for life. And that's always like what I want to walk away with my clients. I think that's the most important thing, rather than focusing so much on finding just your partner.
Okay.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
If somebody does like come to you, so you work for, is it like a matchmaking agency or a company or something? If somebody comes to you, and is there ever been a situation where it's like, I'm not the matchmaker for you, but I can recommend you to someone else?
Yeah.
Does that happen a lot?
100%. Like, actually, we, even as a matchmaking team, we have our own constant, like, team collaborations where we assess our strengths. Because in the end of the day, like, it's matchmaking with a matchmaker and a client is the same thing as, like, compatibility between a relationship or friendships. Not everyone works together. Some people work together better than others. So we like to assess kind of what our strengths are. For me, I think one of my strengths is being very empathetic. I'm a very good listener. A lot of times if people get, frustrated or angry, I don't combat that with like anger or like trying to like, control them. Yeah, pretty much.
Maybe it's your fault, you piece of shit.
Hey, there's people like that, right? And tough love works for some people, right?
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
Some matchmakers, like, that's what they're about, and their client respects them for it. For me, like, I'd rather just hear them out and then see what we can pull from it that's going to be constructive.
Yeah.
So I definitely work well with, like, coachable people who need a little bit more of that, like, hand-holding, maybe are, afraid to be as vulnerable. So, I'm more patient in that sense. But yeah, we as matchmakers, we actually write down like the type of people that we think we could work the best with, so that, we can also tailor to our client to make sure they have the best experience and that they get along well with their matchmaker. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes, it's a mismatch even in the beginning, but we're always like open to switching matchmakers halfway through. But that's something that we always like want to give the option to our clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important part of their life that it's like, if you're going to be the matchmaker for them, it's like, I need to be able to trust you, and I need you to know, I need to know that you have like my best interests in mind, and there could be mismatches in that even. So yeah, I think that's really important. Like, and yeah. What are the best parts of your job, and what are the worst parts of your job? What, like, when you come home, you're like, I'm so proud that I got to do that, and then it's on the opposite side of the spectrum, like, fuck, I have to do that tomorrow.
That's such a good question. I mean, I would definitely say, like, matchmaking, that's pretty much the whole, like, vibe of matchmaking. It can be either really high or really low. And that's, I think, also just a testament to how invested you are in your client's happiness. I was telling you earlier, but, like, matchmaking is definitely not a 9-to-5 job. You don't just stop thinking about them at 5 o'clock, right? It's kind of like they're always on your mind. Every time you're out, you're always like thinking about them and stuff. So,
does that ever like weigh heavily on you?
It does. It definitely does. And I think that's a part of the growing process, even as a matchmaker. It's something I'm learning to like balance and figure out even right now. It's just, sometimes it's hard to like separate the two, just because you, like I said, you are so emotionally invested. And a lot of times people who are matchmakers are naturally like people pleasers. So for us, like, it really does take a toll on us, or it affects us if our client's not happy.
Yeah.
Or and a lot of times we know it's not their fault. It's a very vulnerable process, but let's say if the date doesn't go very well, it's easy to kind of put it back onto the matchmaker, even if sometimes it's out of our control. Like, let's say a date canceled right before the dinner or something like that, and then a lot of times it's pinned back on us saying like, don't you vet for jerks? And it's just one of those things where it's like, I get it. It's frustrating. I would be frustrated if I got all dolled up for a date. I was looking forward to it all week just to have them cancel on me, so I understand, but I think it's still a learning process to learn how to not like take things personally and see it as a reflection of like your work as a matchmaker.
Yeah.
But I obviously like the best parts of matchmaking is when couples come out of it, or like your client walks away saying like, oh my gosh, like I've never felt this way about this person before. Like this is like the best date ever.
Yeah.
Like you really nailed it. That's like the best feeling. Like when a client tells me...
When you lose a client.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, obviously, like, the worst feeling is when, a client's like... I mean, I wouldn't even say the worst part is when things don't work out. I think the worst part... Because sometimes, clients, like, things won't work out, but they don't blame anybody. They understand, like...
No, I'm saying, like... I feel like the best and worst part of it would be that you lose a client. Because if it's the best part, you lost a client because you were successful. They like got married. They don't need a matchmaker anymore. Yeah. But the worst part would probably be like, this person's fucking stupid and they don't know what my needs are or whatever.
Yeah, that definitely sucks. But I mean, also like the way that our company works is even if it's a bad date, it's not like you just split ways. Like you just take that as that as a learning experience. You take the focus points away and you see how you can make the next date better. But you work for a set amount of time with the same client so that you have that time to, refine things and get to know your client on a deeper level as you go. But sometimes you have to go on a couple bad dates to see like what's really important to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bad dates, I think, are just... Not just as they're important in order for you to see like what you actually like and what you enjoy and what you value in a partner.
Yeah.
Because if you're on a bad date, you learn a lot from that.
Yeah. I mean, and those are the best people to work with who can see it that way, right?
Yeah.
And just take it as like a learning opportunity. Yeah.
Have you found that you're single, right?
I have a boyfriend.
Oh, you have a boyfriend.
Yeah.
Have you found that your matchmaking abilities bled into, or like the advice that you give people bled into your personal life?
Oh yeah, I think 100%, because I don't want to be sharing advice that I don't follow myself, right? That would just be hypocritical in that sense. I think the best way is just to come from a personal place too. Like you're gonna gain a lot more insight when it's not just a theory, and when you get to experience it yourself and be like, oh, this is what it's like, right? Even in terms of communication, dating, like, I definitely think like it's important to apply the same things like to your relationship, and then that way I feel like also people have naturally like a sixth sense for calling like bullshit. So it's like if you're somebody who's just like spewing out advice and clearly like you don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah. I think people can sense that.
Yeah, like when you're kind of like a what's the word? Just like you're selling magic elixirs that don't work.
Yeah, exactly,
like,
right?
Yeah.
So it's like when you kind of have that personal experience to draw from, like it's a lot more relatable and people just trust you more. Yeah. But for sure.
Yeah. I would do you think, were you ever single when you were a matchmaker?
Not when I was a matchmaker. But when I was working with dating apps, I was single, okay. So I was like on the apps and things like that, and yeah, that was interesting for sure. I mean, that's one of the things too. So like one of the things I do with my clients is I will do kind of like a little worksheet where you can see your relationship patterns. So one of the questions is like, how did you meet like your past 3 exes? And if you can usually see like a pattern. So for me personally, I realized like dating apps is like not for me. Like it's not my way of connecting with people. I think I have a hard time like meeting somebody on an app and then creating like a romantic connection. I think it's easier for me to do that and then create like a friend connection. But that's just me personally. So like I've noticed like in my past relationships, like if I've met anyone of like my like exes or anything like that, a lot of times I've met them at bars. And I feel like that's just easier for me because I just am more in my element. Like the conversation seems to flow more naturally rather than this kind of like interview style of like running through the same questions. Yeah, you just feel more comfortable. So that works for me. Doesn't work for everybody, but yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
That's really cool. Yeah, I find for myself, like, the quality of person that I'm dating is usually higher if I've met that person in person.
Yeah.
But one of my longest relationships was from Tinder.
Oh, nice.
So I don't even know. I always say, like, if you looked at a lineup of the people that I've dated, you would have no idea. There'd be like no common thread.
Yeah.
You'd just be like, whoa, you're just like a shotgun blast. You're going all over the place.
Well, so then what drew you to each of them initially? Was it?
I have no idea. I mean, a lot of the people that I interact with in terms of like dating and relationships are from apps because I don't drink or smoke or anything. So going to bars is kind of like
feels
not
a little unnatural.
It's unnatural, and also when you're the guy that's not drinking at a bar, it's weird.
Yeah.
Like,
like it's, what are you here for then?
Yeah, exactly. You kind of look like a predator, and like that's not the vibe that I want to put out. That's just like not cool. And then I've just read so many articles written by women that are like, I'm not here to meet men.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't have to matter where. It's like here could be anywhere. I'm not at the gym to meet men. I'm not at the grocery store. I'm not even at a bar. I'm not at a club to meet men. I'm not at a singles event to meet men, you know. So I find it difficult to meet people in person like that anymore because there's not that, you know, you don't know what you're walking into.
Right.
You don't know if they're interested in you. Yeah. You don't know if they're taken, if they're in a relationship already. You don't know if they're straight or bi.
There's a lot more unknowns.
Yeah, and you could be just like walking into a landmine. You could be walking up to somebody and be like, "Hey, how's it going? I'm Joe. I thought that you were like really attractive. I wanted to talk to you." And it's like, you know, they just had a bad day of being catcalled all day.
I know.
And they're just like, "Fuck you." You know? So I think that the best way for me to know, like, for sure this person is looking to date and that they're interested in me is through a dating app.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's already like this preliminary screening. Like, we're both here with the same.
We have a goal and we're here to date.
Yeah.
As
you
opposed
can kind of
to
like cut all the like BS and just get to know them. Yeah.
I think it's a lot more risky to do it in person. And I don't want to sound like if you're trying to meet people in person, good luck to you or whatever.
Yeah.
But because there's definitely value in that. Like a couple of the people that I've met and was in relationships for a while, I met in person. But it's hard out there.
Oh, yeah.
Hence this podcast name. It's just hard. I find it difficult for myself since I don't.
No, yeah.
My situation is unique since I don't drink or smoke or anything. I'm sure if I did, it'd be a little bit more easy.
Yeah.
And even on dating apps, it's
not always that easy.
It's not always that easy because the first date suggestion is always like, "Hey, you want to grab drinks?" No.
Yeah. So what do you usually recommend if you say, "Hey, I don't really drink"?
Coffee, dinner, UCB show.
Do you ever kind of notice one has a higher success rate than the other?
No, not really. I mean, some people, as soon as I drop the bomb that I don't drink or do anything, they're not interested. They don't want to fuck with me anymore.
That's interesting.
But then there's also people like, I talk about this on the podcast a lot. Once I say that I'm a Scorpio, they don't want to fuck with me anymore. Like, there's so many hurdles that you have to jump in order to get to meet someone in person from a dating app.
Oh, yeah. That's very true.
It's just wild, man.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, my time on the apps really, like, shook me. Like, it shook my confidence. Yeah.
How?
And I would say generally, like, I'm a pretty, like, confident person, you know? I respect myself, and I know, like, obviously that I'm a friendly person. So I've never really had, like, too much trouble in terms of connecting with somebody or, like, even flirting or anything like that. But for some reason, like, when I was on the apps, like, I could not get a second date. And it was,
Really?
yeah, and it was just very, like, yeah, and I feel like I'm pretty self-aware, so, like, I can pick up on cues if, like, oh, this person's not interested. But there was some dates where I was like, oh, yeah, for sure, like, this is an amazing date. Like, we're gonna, like, this person might be, like, boyfriend material. And then, like, yeah, never hear from them again or anything like that. So I was like, yeah, it really kind of, like, messed with my confidence a little bit. But, yeah, I kind of, now when I reflect on it, I'm like, okay, I think that's just kind of the nature of dating apps. I hear it all the time with clients and friends. So I'm like, don't take it so personally.
Yeah, I was going to say, looking back now with the knowledge that you have, do you have any, like, reflections of, like, this is just what it is? Sometimes people just fucking ghost or whatever, and they're just not interested, and there's no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah. And I mean, that too, but I also will, I'll take some ownership. Like, there's some stuff I could have worked on.
Yes, I'm a big fan of people taking ownership. That's
like
usually when I'm do a podcast with with people, a big part of it, and I'm going to ask you for this in a couple seconds, but like a big part of it is like crazy dating stories where it's like, oh, this date was just horrible. Yeah. And my favorite stories are when people take ownership or where they're like, I fucked this up. I fucked this date up. Yeah. Because it's so easy to be like, this other person was crazy. Yeah. But I think it's funnier when it's like, I just dropped the ball. Yeah. So, have any crazy, weird date stories that you...
I wouldn't say that they're crazy. Like, they're, in my opinion, like, I think that they're pretty normal. One of them was definitely... It was definitely unique in the sense.
Let's get into it. What happened?
But, like, I feel kind of bad, like, with the situation just because it was, like, out of, like, his control, too. But essentially, like, I met up with this guy, like, on Tinder, right? And already off the bat, like, from our conversation, I was like, ooh, we're already clashing a bit, right? You could definitely tell he's, like, alpha energy, right? Like, and I was like, I don't really vibe that well with people who are really, like, it's my way or the highway. Yeah. That was kind of like, he was calling all the shots and stuff. And so I was already a little bit like, I don't know about him. But I'm like, I'm going to keep an open mind. Yeah. And then I went out with him. And it was fine, actually. Like, we got along really well. But, like, so we went to, like, eat at this, like, Korean restaurant, right? And then afterwards, we wanted to get ice cream. So everything was fine. We're, like, talking at the ice cream shop. And then just, like, halfway through the conversation, like, I could tell he was, like, zoning out, right? So I was, like, thinking, oh, my story must just be really boring. I'm boring him now, right? Because I see this, like, glazed look in his eyes, right? But then it's, like, started getting weird because he started getting really pale, right? And I just see, like, beads of sweat, like, coming down his face. And I was like, what the heck? Is he okay? And he's just, like, really quiet. And then he's just like, and then he goes, sorry, wait, I just need to go to the bathroom real quick. Yeah, and I was like, okay, sure, no problem. And he goes to the bathroom. He's in there a long time. Like, I kid you not, almost like 30 minutes. I was like,
oh man, no.
Something's not right in there. Yeah. And then finally he comes out, right? It's not looking any better. He's still like, he's sweaty, super pale. I was just like, are you okay? Is everything all right? And he's just like, he's like, yeah, I don't know. I think, like, something's, like, happened from the restaurant or something like that. He's like, it's fine. I was like, okay, like, we can head back, I'm fine. And he's just like, no, it's fine. So I'm like, okay. So I'm trying to, like, pick up the conversation, like, where I left off. And then just, like, a few minutes in, he just starts, like belching, like, burping, and, like, it's, like, gurgling, and his stomach is just like, he's just going off, and I was like, whoa.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and he's just, like, burping nonstop, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, okay, this date is over. I'm gonna take you home so you don't
Nothing
die.
Against you,
yeah,
but
like, for your
you should
sake.
go home.
Yeah. And so we took the same car, so I was driving, and in my car, he's just, like, burping nonstop, and his stomach is just, like, gurgling, and it's, like, smelly from, like, the soup. So I was just like, oh my gosh, this poor guy is going to shit himself. When we got to my place, I'm like, do you want to use, like, my bathroom? And then he was, like, really contemplating because I don't even think he could hold it.
Yeah.
But then he was just like, no, it's fine. I think I just gotta go. Yeah, and then we never talked to each other again after that.
See, this is why I refuse to go to Korean barbecue.
It wasn't even Korean barbecue. It was
was it?
Korean soup.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
But no, that too. I went on a Tinder date for Korean barbecue. I'm like, this is gonna be fun. We get to cook our own meat. That's the worst idea ever.
I hate that shit. I don't trust myself to cook it well,
Yeah.
and I don't know how to cook the meats,
Yeah.
and each meat has a different type of cooking that it needs to be done.
It's true.
And also, if I'm going out, I'm not gonna fucking do the work.
Yeah.
You know? I hate that shit. People get on me about that all the time, but I'm seriously on my no, if I'm going out, you're serving me, okay? I'm not paying to
so
cook
true.
my own food.
I know.
Fuck that.
I hear that a lot.
Dude, no.
No, I get that. I thought it was going to be fun. We'd have a little mini activity to do in case there was awkward silences.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Korean barbecue is a terrible first date idea because your breath smells really bad afterwards and you just smell like smoke. And the smoke is in between you guys too, so it's kind of awkward. And they say you kind of far because there's fire in between.
Yeah, I
you
mean,
guys,
you
so.
have to have
It's hard to hear
Bunsen
each other.
burner.
Yeah, that was a bad idea. Good in theory, maybe. I don't know about that, but
that's like a down the road relationship kind of thing.
yeah, for sure, not a first date. Maybe third or fourth.
All right, I'm gonna pivot a little bit.
Yeah.
Back to the matchmaking. What do you think makes a good matchmaker? If someone listening is like, I think I could do that, what qualities do you think would make a good matchmaker?
I definitely think like I said, you have to have a lot of empathy, right? It's a very emotional job, so you really want to be able to understand the other person's feelings and what they're going through, and you have to be able to navigate that in terms of how to guide them, right? And what the next steps would be. And then I think you also have to, for one, just be a very good listener, and you have to be able to read between the lines. You have to have very good observation skills. So sometimes, even though the client might not know this about themselves, you can pick up on things about them, they seem very anxious or a little bit insecure, right? They seem shy. You have to pick up on those cues about them, and then you have to be able to know who would be a good complement with that person to be able to help them feel more at ease. If you pair two anxious people together, that's going to be a train wreck, right? There's a lot of things. You just have to have good self-awareness, good observation skills to be able to pick up, and just like I said, really understanding the person's emotions so that you can know on a core fundamental level who's going to contrast that personality the best. Yeah. And so a lot of it, I think those are the key elements, and then the rest of it, I think you just have to be a good listener. You have to be able to just hear people's stories and not put your own judgment and bias on them. I think you just have to be very open-minded. I think a lot of times a bad matchmaker is somebody who puts their client in a box, a stereotype, oh, they're crazy. You just write them off as this is my crazy client. No, there's a lot of layers to it, and you have to be able to understand she's not crazy, she's just scared of being hurt and see it for what it is. So you have to be good at asking the whys and the questions behind their actions, and not just see it for face value. And just see the deeper meanings behind it. I think those are the most important things as a matchmaker. I mean, I always kind of joke too that matchmaking is kind of also being a love recruiter, right? You are essentially networking with a lot of people and getting them to open up to you as well. So a lot of it is kind of scouting and looking for potential singles. But yeah, so I think you have to just naturally have pretty good people skills. But other than that, as a matchmaker, I feel the rest is kind of just you kind of just have to have it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just has to be
something
a part
innate
of who you are as a person. Yeah.
All right, I have a question that might be, has there ever been a situation where you're you meet up with a matchmaking client, or not necessarily you, but have you ever heard of this happening where the matchmaking client becomes interested in the matchmaker?
That definitely happens.
Yeah, because there's a thing of like, I think it's, I could be wrong and I could be making this up, but I feel like it's true. Where if there's a male therapist, if a woman goes to a male therapist, it's likely that she will start to have feelings for the male therapist or something.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting. I mean, that's definitely a common thing for matchmakers. But in the end of the day, like, that's one of our cardinal rules too.
Yeah.
Like, you can't date a client, you can't date like a match. Obviously, like, that's not what we're here for. But matchmakers do get hit on all the time, right? I mean, that's just
like, why are you setting me up with this? I could just go out with you. You're so great. You're perfect for me. You know my needs. And they're just like, ha, ha, ha. Here's Amber, though.
Yeah, right? You'd be like, well, I'm not saying, well, here you go. Like, what about this person? You do get that a bit. You just have to know how to, like, navigate it and, just not put out the vibes yourself, too, right? Like, you just want to keep it professional. I think if you do set that tone, like, we're purely here to talk about my client and for work, it can be hard because, like, we're almost like going on the first date for them, right? And so it's easy to kind of potentially feel like, oh, maybe there's something here, right? Yeah. But in the end of the day, like, I think it's just up to a matchmaker. Sometimes, like, people end up having a connection, It's like we're all humans in the end of the day. Like, you can't really help your feelings. Yeah. It's just what you do with those feelings that kind of, I mean, you don't want that conflict of interest. You can't blame people if there's, like, attraction there. Yeah. But if you act on it, then, I think that's telling of a matchmaker. But I think if you're able to, separate the two and keep it professional and not cross that line, then I think that you're working with a good person.
Perfect. Yeah. All right, I'm going to ask you the last two questions I ask everybody on this podcast. What's one thing that you would like to change about dating? If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing, what would it be?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, I'm full of really good questions. I've been doing this for a while.
Wow, this is some hard-hitting stuff. I mean, obviously for me, I think I just wish that people would be more open-minded. Like, that's always the thing that I come across. Like, so there's, like I said, there's amazing people out there that maybe are just a few years out of your original preferences. Like, I think when you kind of just get rid of the checklist and just focus on really connecting with somebody and not looking at what they're doing wrong or right, like, then you can really connect with somebody. Because in the end of the day, like, there's no one set formula for life or relationships, right? You can say this works for me, but in the end of the day, like, you don't know what the future holds. You don't know what life's going to send your way. So you can't ever say anything's 100% like, this is the right way to go. Yeah. Yeah. So I really think people who are open more doors and, just keep an open mind about, relationships and who they meet, like, I think they have a much higher chance of, like, finding their person than somebody who has this, like, really set checklist. Yeah.
All right. And last question before we wrap it up. What's one piece of advice that you would like to give everybody listening about dating? I'm sure that was already answered in the last question.
I would definitely say.
This always happens. I need to redo this. I'm such an idiot.
I mean, I do think that they kind of tie into
Be more open-minded. It used to be 3 questions, and I got rid of one of the questions. Yeah. Because it was the first question was, what would one thing that you would change? And then it was, what's the worst part about dating? And then it was this last one of, like, what's one piece of advice?
I like that format.
Yeah, but then it was like, what's one thing that you would change? And they'd be like, I hate when people ghost me. Oh, yeah. And then it was like, what's the worst part? And they'd be like, that's actually a good one. Well, I hate when people ghost me. And it's like, well, what's one piece of advice? And you're like, don't ghost people. So, you know what? This is an ever-changing podcast. Yeah.
I think you're too hard on yourself, tweaking. Honestly. Like, this is a great podcast.
Thank you.
You asked some really good questions.
Oh, stop. Text it to me. So I can screenshot that and put it on the wall of compliments. I got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
whatever, fuck it.
But if I am getting a little bit more specific about being open-minded, I always tell anybody that I work with too, I'm like, look, one date is just not going to cut it. Like, I really think you need to give people the 2-date rule at least, just because, especially if you're meeting somebody for the first time, there's so much room for misinterpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't know this person's life story to base like an entire characterization of a person on 2 hours. You don't know, what if like right before this date they found out like a relative just passed or something like that, and they're very quiet on the date.
Mm-hmm.
And then you walk away saying, they're so quiet, I don't want to be with a shy person. But you don't know that they're shy, you don't know what they've been through. But I think when you get to meet somebody for the first time, kind of break the ice, and then get to go out with them a second time, it can either be that you end up really liking them, or actually some people have a really good first date, and then by the second date they get to see other sides to them and say, oh, there's actually no chemistry here.
Yeah.
So I think you just kind of need at least 2 dates to really confidently know what you feel.
I agree with you 100%.
Awesome.
I've been preaching
Yay.
the 2-date rule for a while.
2-date rule, yeah.
Because, I mean, unless something goes horrifically wrong on the
right,
first
obviously.
date, you don't do
Yeah.
a 2-date, be like, oh, that guy drugged me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll give him a second chance. No,
God, yeah.
don't do that
Yeah,
shit.
I would never say give that
But
person a chance.
there's like a lot of pressure that goes along with the first date, and there's nerves, and
exactly.
people are like, oh, I don't know, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I always think that the 2-date rule is good, unless, extenuating circumstances.
Right. Exactly.
But, Alyssa, now is your time to promote whatever you want. If there's a website that
awesome.
people can go to get, matchmaking, etc. Fuck, etc. God.
That's
whatever
okay,
you
that'll be the
wanna,
last one of the day.
promote, any kind of like stuff, go
Yeah.
for it right now.
Oh, awesome. Well, as you guys know, I'm a matchmaker, so I work with a company called 3-Day Rule. So if you ever want to find me, you can go to 3dayrule.com. My name is Alyssa. You can find me there. Maybe we can meet for coffee. I work specifically in LA, OC, and San Diego. So if you're in any of those areas, it'd be a nice time to chat. And then if you want to follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is matched by Alyssa.
There we go.
Thanks.
Alyssa, thanks so much for doing
Wow,
this.
this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
There you have it, everybody. That was my chat with Alyssa. Hope we all learned a little bit about matchmaking and learned about how to be better daters and all that good stuff. And etc. Ugh, gross. For all the information about this podcast, you can go to datingishardcomedy.com. You can follow the Instagram at datingishardcomedy, and you can follow me on Instagram at Joe Welkie. Please subscribe, rate, review, give it 5 stars. If you're loving this show, tell a friend. If you're not loving the show, shut the fuck up, please. I hope you guys are having a good time with it. I know I am. And until next time,